Ibrahim Traoré meets Kim Jong-un, global powers are in shock. In a stunning geopolitical twist, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the bold and defiant leader of Burkina Faso, has officially met with North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un. This unprecedented meeting has left Western powers stunned and sent shockwaves through global political circles. What does this alliance mean for Africa, Asia, and the world? Is this the beginning of a new world order led by independent nations rejecting Western dominance? In this explosive video, we break down the high-level meeting between Traoré and Kim Jong on how this alliance threatens Western influence in Africa, reactions from the US, NATO, China, and Russia, what it means for Pan-Africanism, sovereignty, and anti-colonial resistance, the growing trend of strategic alliances between Africa and Asia. This historic event may reshape global diplomacy and mark a new chapter in Africa's liberation movement. Traoré continues to assert himself as one of the most fearless, anti-imperialist leaders of the 21st century. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more uncensored geopolitical updates, African leadership news, and global power shifts. 1. The high-level meeting between Traoré and Kim Jong-un. Context and hypothetical scenario. No verifiable reports confirm a meeting between Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's interim president since his 2022 coup, and Kim Jong-un, North Korea's leader. However, Burkina Faso's foreign policy under Traoré has shifted toward non-Western powers, as evidenced by its role in the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, with Mali and Niger, expulsion of French troops, and deepened ties with Russia and China. A hypothetical meeting with Kim Jong-un would align with this trajectory, reflecting Traoré's pursuit of alternative partnerships to counter Western influence. Purpose and agenda. Such a meeting would likely prioritize military cooperation. North Korea, known for arms exports and military training, could offer Burkina Faso affordable weaponry or expertise to combat jihadist insurgencies in the Sahel, replacing Western support. Historical precedent exists, as North Korea trained African militaries during the Cold War, e.g., Zimbabwe in the 1980s. Economic support. Burkina Faso, rich in gold but economically strained, might seek North Korean technical assistance in agriculture or mining, mirroring past North Korean projects in Ethiopia and Madagascar. In exchange, Burkina Faso could offer resource access or diplomatic backing in forums like the UN. Ideological alignment. Traoré's anti-imperialist rhetoric, inspired by Thomas Sankara, resonates with North Korea's narrative of resisting Western hegemony. Discussions would likely emphasize sovereignty and mutual opposition to neo-colonialism. Format and secrecy. The meeting could occur bilaterally in Pyongyang or Ouagadougou, or indirectly via a multilateral summit hosted by mutual allies like Russia or China. Given North Korea's pariah status and Western scrutiny, it might be discreet, with minimal public disclosure to avoid immediate sanctions or condemnation. Significance. This engagement would symbolize Burkina Faso's rejection of Western dominance, aligning with the AES's anti-imperialist confederation goals. It would also signal North Korea's renewed interest in Africa, leveraging the continent's resources and diplomatic weight to counter global isolation. 2. How this alliance threatens Western influence in Africa. A Burkina Faso-North Korea alliance, even if symbolic, would challenge Western influence across multiple domains. Economic leverage erosion. Western powers, particularly France and the US, have maintained influence through aid, trade, and financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Burkina Faso's pivot to Asian partners reduces dependency on these mechanisms, which often impose austerity or policy reforms perceived as neo-colonial. For instance, Niger's 2023 halt of uranium exports to France after its coup reflects this trend. North Korea's involvement, though limited economically, could facilitate broader Asian investment, especially from China. Security framework disruption. The US and France have invested heavily in Sahel security, training local forces, including Traoré himself, and maintaining bases. The AES's expulsion of French troops from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, coupled with reliance on Russian Wagner Group mercenaries, signals a rejection of Western military frameworks. North Korean arms or training could further diminish NATO's role, complicating counter-terrorism efforts against groups like JNIM. Ideological competition. The West promotes liberal democracy and market economies, but Traoré's government and the AES advocate state-led development and anti-imperialism, echoing North Korea's Juche ideology. This alignment challenges Western soft power, particularly in youth-driven movements inspired by Sankara's legacy. The AES's vision of a confederation free from ECOWAS and Western influence directly contests regional integration models backed by the EU and US resource control shift. Western companies dominate Africa's extractive industries, including Burkina Faso's gold sector. An alliance with North Korea, potentially backed by China's Belt and Road Initiative, could redirect contracts to Asian firms. China's investments in Nigeria's oil and Ethiopia's infrastructure illustrate this trend, threatening Western economic interests. Diplomatic isolation. By aligning with North Korea, Burkina Faso could embolden other African states to defy Western pressure, weakening sanctions regimes and diplomatic norms. This would complicate US and EU efforts to isolate Pyongyang globally. The cumulative effect would force Western powers to reassess their Africa strategy, potentially increasing aid or military commitments to counterbalance Asian influence, though domestic constraints, e.g., US focus on Ukraine, may limit their response. 3. Reactions from the US, NATO, China, and Russia. United States. Concern level high. The US views North Korea as a rogue state and its African engagements as a threat to regional stability and sanctions enforcement. A Traoré-Kim Jong-un alliance would alarm Washington, especially given North Korea's recent military ties with Russia, including troop deployments to Ukraine. Response. Likely to include diplomatic condemnation, tightened sanctions on Burkina Faso, and pressure via ECOWAS or pro-Western neighbors like Ghana. The US might also increase intelligence efforts to monitor North Korean activities in the Sahel. Public narrative. Statements would emphasize human rights, democracy, and the risks of aligning with a regime under UN sanctions, as seen in US critiques of North Korea's global outreach. Constraints. Focus on Ukraine, China, and domestic politics may limit robust action, relegating the response to symbolic measures. NATO. Concern level moderate. NATO's primary focus is Russia and China, but a North Korean foothold in Africa would raise concerns about anti-Western blocs expanding. The Sahel's instability affects European security, particularly France's interests. Response. NATO would likely defer to US leadership, supporting ECOWAS or regional allies with training and funding. France, a NATO member, might push for EU sanctions or counterterrorism aid to contain AES influence. Public narrative. Focus on regional stability and counterterrorism, avoiding direct mention of North Korea to prevent escalating tensions with Russia or China. Constraints. Limited direct presence in Africa restricts NATO's role to indirect support. China. Concern level low. With strategic interest. As North Korea's primary ally and a major investor in Africa, China would view this alliance as complementary to its Belt and Road goals. Response. Likely to support indirectly through economic aid to Burkina Faso or diplomatic cover in international forums. China might mediate to ensure North Korea's involvement aligns with its broader African strategy, avoiding reputational risks. Public narrative, neutral, emphasizing non-interference and South-South cooperation, as seen in China's Africa summits. Strategic gain, strengthens China's position as Africa's preferred partner, countering Western influence without direct confrontation. Russia, concern level, none. Highly supportive. Russia has deepened ties with the AES, offering military support, debt relief, and grain to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Response, strong endorsement, potentially facilitating the Traoré-Kim Jong-un meeting. Russia could integrate North Korea into its Sahel strategy, using Pyongyang's arms or expertise to complement Wagner's role. Public narrative, celebrate the alliance as a blow to Western imperialism, aligning with Russia's anti-hegemonic rhetoric. Strategic gain, bolsters Russia's influence in Africa, isolating ECOWAS and France while countering NATO's global reach. 4. What it means for Pan-Africanism, sovereignty, and anti-colonial resistance. Pan-Africanism, alignment with ideals. Pan-Africanism, rooted in unity and self-determination, is central to the AES's vision of a confederation free from Western-backed structures like ECOWAS. A North Korea alliance would reinforce this by providing an external partner that shares anti-imperialist values, echoing Cold War-era ties between African liberation movements and non-aligned states, e.g., Cuba, USSR. Practical implications. The alliance could strengthen regional solidarity by diversifying partnerships, reducing reliance on Western aid. However, North Korea's limited economic capacity means the partnership's success depends on broader Asian support, particularly from China. Risks. Over-reliance on foreign powers, even non-Western ones, could undermine Pan-African autonomy. The AES must prioritize intra-African cooperation to avoid replicating historical dependencies. Sovereignty, strengthening control. Traoré's government emphasizes sovereignty through resource nationalization and rejection of foreign interference, as seen in its critique of French exploitation. North Korea's model of self-reliance and defiance of sanctions could inspire Burkina Faso to assert greater control over its gold and agricultural sectors. Challenges: North Korea's authoritarian system and China's economic dominance pose risks of new dependencies. Sovereignty requires balancing external support with domestic capacity building, such as investing in local industries and education. Symbolic impact: the alliance would signal Burkina Faso's agency in choosing partners, challenging Western narratives of African passivity, anti-colonial resistance. Historical continuity: Traoré's invocation of Sankara and the AES's rejection of ECOWAS framed the alliance as a continuation of anti-colonial resistance. North Korea's support for African independence movements in the 1960s, 80s, e.g., Angola, Namibia, aligns with this narrative. Modern relevance: the partnership counters neo-colonial practices like resource extraction and conditional aid. However, tangible benefits, jobs, infrastructure, security, must materialize to sustain public support and avoid disillusionment. Global resonance: the alliance could inspire other African nations to challenge Western dominance, amplifying anti-colonial rhetoric but requiring careful diplomacy to avoid isolation. This alignment advances ideological goals but demands pragmatic governance to translate rhetoric into sustainable development, ensuring resistance does not compromise long-term sovereignty. 5. The growing trend of strategic alliances between Africa and Asia. The trend of Afro-Asia alliances is reshaping global geopolitics, driven by economic, security, and ideological factors. Economic partnerships: China's dominance. The Belt and Road Initiative has funded infrastructure across Africa, including Nigeria's $5.8 billion Mambilla hydropower project and Ethiopia's Addis Ababa-Djibouti railway. These projects offer alternatives to Western financing, which often comes with political strings. Other Asian players: India's $10 billion investment in African energy and agriculture, and Japan's Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, diversify Africa's options, reducing Western monopoly. North Korea's role: while limited, North Korea's historical projects, e.g., agricultural training in Tanzania, suggest potential for niche contributions, particularly in resource-scarce nations like Burkina Faso. Military and security cooperation: Russia's influence. Wagner Group's presence in Mali and Burkina Faso, alongside arms deals, challenges Western security dominance. Russia's joint exercises with China in Africa signal a coordinated anti-Western strategy. North Korea's potential: Pyongyang's arms exports and training could complement Russian efforts, offering low-cost solutions to Sahel governments facing insurgencies. China's growing role: China's military base in Djibouti and peacekeeping contributions in South Sudan indicate a broader security footprint, indirectly supporting allies like the AES. Ideological alignment: non-interference, China and North Korea's emphasis on sovereignty and non-interference resonates with African leaders wary of Western conditionality, as seen in the AES's rejection of ECOWAS sanctions. State-led development: Asian models of centralized planning appeal to governments seeking rapid development without liberal democratic reforms, aligning with Traoré's vision of South-South solidarity. Forums like the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, promote a shared anti-imperialist narrative, strengthening diplomatic ties. Resource access: Asian demand. China's need for minerals, e.g., cobalt, lithium, and energy drives investments in Congo and Niger. Burkina Faso's gold could attract similar interest, reducing Western firms' dominance. Mutual benefit: African nations gain infrastructure and revenue, while Asian partners secure supply chains, as seen in Angola's oil for infrastructure deals with China. Soft power and cultural exchange: China's initiatives, Confucius Institutes and scholarships for African students foster long-term loyalty, competing with Western cultural influence. North Korea's symbolism: Pyongyang's anti-imperialist rhetoric appeals to African youth inspired by figures like Sankara, though its practical soft power is limited. India and Japan: both nations expand cultural and educational programs, enhancing Asia's appeal as a partner. Challenges and risks: debt trap concerns. China's loans have raised fears of debt dependency, as seen in Zambia's struggles with repayments. Sovereignty risks: over-reliance on Asian partners could replicate colonial-era exploitation if contracts favor foreign interests. Balancing act: African leaders must negotiate equitable terms, prioritizing local employment and technology transfer to ensure sustainable development. This trend empowers African nations to diversify partnerships but requires strategic diplomacy to safeguard sovereignty and maximize benefits. Conclusion: while no evidence confirms a Traoré-Kim Jong-un meeting, The hypothetical scenario illuminates Burkina Faso's strategic realignment and the broader Africa-Asia alliance trend. Such a partnership would erode Western economic, security, and ideological influence in Africa, prompting varied reactions from global powers. It aligns with Pan-Africanist and anti-colonial ideals but risks new dependencies if not carefully managed. The growing Africa-Asia axis empowers the continent to assert agency, but sustainable development and sovereignty depend on equitable terms and intra-African cooperation. This dynamic underscores the evolving global order, with Africa as a pivotal player in reshaping geopolitical alignments.